That's a different when you're doing the men, but hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sage Dragon Book Show. Today is September 27th, 2025. I hope you all are well. For anyone who's new, thanks for joining. My name is Shaquana. I host this show every week, Saturdays at 11. It's a way for me to share my love of books, fiction, poetry, just thought provoking books, of course, all sorts of genres, and share it with you. And I read the books. The reviews I provide are spoiler free, but I also pull out the themes so that even if you haven't read the book, you can contribute to the discussion. So it's interactive and it's not just me talking. Please like and subscribe and share Sage Dragon Book Show. You can find it on different socials. I'm still building up this work, that I'm doing, and it's fun building, meeting people. If you know librarians, independent bookstore owners, authors, if you're an author, if you enjoy reading, if you're part of a book club, if you know people who run book clubs, those might be some of the people interested in tuning into this show. Okay, so today we have been celebrating National Hispanic Heritage Month over the last couple of episodes. And I've been able to just really enjoy all these books that I've been discussing that are written by um, authors of the Hispanic diaspora. So, first we did the Latin women, and I reviewed those over a couple of episodes that you can review. And today I am discussing two books by some Latin men, one of Puerto Rican, another one of Mexican Indian descent, and they are very relevant. The topics that these books are about are very relevant. So I hope that I got people out there listening to these. Listening. Hold on. So there it is. Victim, and my name is Iris. So before we get into that, I have a book news segment where I share the latest in book news for the week. I have a couple of um, information that I'd like to bring your way. So the first is that the I read on the Literary Hub's website that in the DC area, there's been a 60% drop in sales since August, and federal troops are trampling businesses at DC bookstores. And I pray for our uh, families and fellow citizens in the DC area. I lived in the DMV area in the early 2000s, and I have friends, actually, a friend of mine who was also part of a writers and poetry community that I was in works for the Smithsonian African American Museum. So I think about my people in DC quite a bit. And with the harsh climate going on right now, it's in fact affecting these bookstores because it's a combination of people maybe not having the disposable income that they had because there's been so much job loss in DC with a lot of the layoffs once the Doge initiative went through. But it's also the safety, and a lot of times those book spaces, I know for me, they've always been a place that I'd like to go to for safety. So, how can we help? Go to the uh, website. This is, you can look at this link, loyaltybookstores.com, and you can purchase books directly from the website, and that will help support that independent bookstore. In other news, this is really exciting. Solange Knowles launched a library to preserve and share rare Black literature. That's Solange. She's always giving back. A beautiful spirit. So, St. Heron Community Library is one of her latest initiatives, and it's a literary center dedicated to students, artists, creatives, and general book literature enthusiasts interested in exploring and studying the breadth of artistic experiences. So I was reading a little bit about it. It's going to be done in phases, but she has rare works that will people can borrow. And for now, there's 65 pieces that have been curated. There's going to be different guest curations. I feel like she's very intentional. Like whenever she does stuff, and that's just the artistry of her family is, that the brilliance. It's always very thought out. So even the pieces, there's going to be like breath round the pieces so that they can be really celebrated. And I'm going to show you some of the website here because she's got some pieces, stuff I've never seen before or heard, a daughter's geography, American Negro art, a lot of like art catalogs, poetry editions. If you scroll down more, Lucille Clifton, uh, Ruth Waddy, Cedric Dover. So yeah, check out the website. So many pieces I've never heard of. I remember being in high school and taking AP English, and I was like, why aren't we reading more works by Black and multicultural artists? And I brought that up to my teachers. I was kind of militant in high school. They called me that, but then I started a multicultural club where we did stuff on our own because I'm looking at these titles and many of them I've never heard of, but that's the fun of it. You can pick something that might be of interest to you. I know that I've had like relatives asking me how they can help their sons and grandkids and nieces and nephews learn more about our culture. This is a beautiful initiative that was Solange started to help with that. So you check out the site, um, borrow something, but most important, return it because that's how libraries work. So I think that's a dope piece. Anybody out there yet? Anybody heard about this? The news just it was just on all the news feeds about 2 days ago. She's getting a lot of great publicity about it. In other book news this week, the Booker Prize shortlist was announced. The Booker Prize is a very prominent literary award in the UK. So I think it was might have been last episode or the episode before last. I was sharing that the National Book Foundation announced their long list, and then it's going to be narrowed down. So it's the National Book Foundation is like the United States prominent award. The Booker Prize one is out of the UK. Although any books that are written in English can qualify for it, but similarly, tons of books are nominated. They have a panel that reads all these books, and I'm like, wow. And it's a lot of books they have to read, and then they narrow it down. So these are them: Susan Choi, Flashlight, um, The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny by Kiran Desai, Audition by Kate Katamura, The Rest of Our Lives by Ben Markovitis, The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller, and Flesh by David Saleh. I know nothing about any of these books. I haven't read any of them. Has anyone out there listening read any of these? It's kind of like, you know how a lot of times when it's Oscar season, you're like, I haven't seen any of these movies. And then you go and see them after the Oscars. So yeah, congratulations to all of those authors. And I'm going to look and see if any of them are books that strike my fancy. And if so, I may read one or two, because usually they are really good if they, are picked by those. And then lastly, many of you know Asada Shakur has transitioned, freedom fighter, woman, mother, daughter, sister, aunt to uh, Tupac Shakur. And, a lot of people are posting about her. I was just listening to Common's song, Assad, on his Like Water for Chocolate album, thinking about how vividly he painted that song based on the autobiography. And if you haven't read that autobiography, I would recommend it. It's really good. And it's one of those that it's unput downable, as the bookstagrammers say. You won't be able to put it down. I read it years ago. I think I might have read it twice. And I have a copy of it. And she goes through her life and the incident that was the killing of the police officer, and how she was targeted for that, and um, being in prison. And yeah, it was really incredible. And then somebody posted this Instagram page that I follow. They were saying, she just really modeled caring for your community and not being worried about the bag. And, because if you think about the Black Panther Party, it's some of these, they become tropes now. But if you really look at what they were doing, things like feeding their community, teaching literacy, keeping people safe, trying to instill a sense of pride in us, for us to feel good about ourselves naturally, without feeling like we have to have a bunch of materialness and be disunified. And that's a lot of the things that she was trying to do and during that time. And she was able to live in Cuba. And I would wonder from time to time what life was like for her. Like, I wonder what these 40 years were. I came across a couple of articles a few years back when I was looking for her, but I really just wanted to talk about the book because I'm not an expert on her life. But I did read that and I wanted to share. It's probably, I'm guessing it's still in print. Maybe you could find it at the library. And it's probably going to be something that gets a resurgence now that she has transitioned. So rest in peace, Ashada Shakur. So let's get into today's review. Okay, so the first one up is this really great book I read recently called Victim, a novel by Andrew Boryga. Author spotlight. Andrew Boryga is a award-winning writer and editor from the Bronx. His work has been published in the New York Times, the Atlantic, the Paris Review, and Victim is his first book. And it's a newer book. It just came out last year. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the plot of this. So it's the story of Javier Perez. He's a young Puerto Rican man aspiring writer from an unnamed rough and tumble neighborhood in the Bronx. At the beginning of the novel, we see 12-year-old Javi on a visit to Puerto Rico, watching his drug dealer father make his rounds, hustling and shaking down customers for money. Javi witnesses his father gunned down at a neighborhood block party, then returns to the Bronx and lives with his cash strapped, industrious mother, who urges him to become an engineer and make something of his life. Several years later, Javi's best friend, Giovanni, drops out of school and ends up in prison after the gang he joins gets busted. At the urging of a school counselor, Javi writes a moving but largely embellished essay about his hardships growing up and losing his childhood friend to the system and winning a scholarship to a prestigious university. There he meets Anise Delgado, a half Latina, half white student who he starts dating, who raises his consciousness and encourages him to write the truth about the injustices inflicted upon people of color. Javi discovers a marketplace for personal stories and police harassment, displacement, and gang indoctrination. All experiences that often happen to people like Javi, just not to him specifically. So I'm going to play a clip where you can hear from the author's words what the book is about.
Hi, my name is Andrew Boryga, and I'm the author of Victim, which is my debut novel. Victim follows a protagonist named Javier Perez, who is a young man from the Bronx with big dreams of becoming a famous writer. Javier realizes pretty early on in his life that he can speed up these dreams of his if he particularly writes about his tragic background and upbringing and also dwells on some of the hardships that he's experienced and friends of his and his community. He's coming of age in a time when editors and publications are beginning to speak proudly and loudly about how they want diverse voices, but in particular, diverse voices that are writing about these sorts of subjects: oppression, trauma, victimhood. Javi's a smart kid, sees the field before him, and basically decides to pimp his own backstory out to try and get attention from these editors and publications. It works, and slowly but surely it snowballs, and he's soon fabricating, adding flourishes, and simply making up stories as a whole. Um, it's a fun, propulsive novel, I think, that asks and raises a lot of questions about race, identity, victimhood, and representation, particularly in the media, of people of color. It's a novel that is pretty close to me because I spent 10 years writing it, and a lot of it is based on my own experiences moving through the media and writing for big legacy publications and having dealings with editors and understanding sort of what my role in these publications really was at the end of the day. It's also a novel I'm proud of because I think it comes across as searching for answers and not necessarily delivering them to the readers, which I think a lot of readers have appreciated. They may love Javi, they may hate him, but they usually understand him by the end and walk away with some big questions for themselves about how they encounter voices from marginalized communities and what they really value about those voices or not. And
Yeah. So there's only a little bit left of the clip, but for the interest of time, I won't show the whole thing. But it's nice to hear from the voice, from the author themselves, what they're trying to convey with their books. So yeah, this young man, he is really hustling the whole story of being the victim. There's the themes in it. They get into trauma, they get into identity. You get Puerto Rican culture because he grew up, he goes to Puerto Rico. So there's a nice description of the land and his father's ways. Authenticity is a big theme of this. What is, I think also imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome is when people feel like they don't deserve the success they're getting, or they don't understand why people are very interested in promoting them. And Javier, he had some good qualities about him, but at a young age, he felt like there wasn't anything special about him. And then he was getting the guidance counselor was trying to, this is where it starts. He's, he had already went through a traumatic experience. He watched his father die. But when he got back to the Bronx, part of him felt like he was sad, but he would go to school and say his teachers would say, "Do you need some time? Are you okay?" He was taking advantage of that in order to get out of class. So that started making him feel like an imposter, if that makes sense. So then he started doing that. Then he was very close with his best friend Gio. Gio decided to become a drug dealer and drop out of school. He tried to ask, he really didn't want him to do that. He did it. And then he ended up getting busted and going to prison right around the time that Javier was a senior in high school. So the guidance counselor encourages him to write an essay. And that's when he first started being encouraged to embellish his story. It wasn't enough for him to talk about the fact that he was growing up and he had a friend who ended up incarcerated, a best friend who spent a lot of time together with, and he lost his father. They wanted him to go even further into things that weren't really happening to Javier. Javier had a stability through his mother. He ate every night. He knew how to like navigate the neighborhood so he wasn't feeling unsafe. And that's the shame of it, is that a lot of times certain groups, minority groups or black and brown folk, it's almost like we have to exaggerate our story in order for it to just be for the humanity to be seen. And that's very problematic. And it's partly why I think this is such a great book and a very relevant book. And so some of the other themes are DEI in the college and professional settings, because he ends up writing that exaggerated essay, which gets him into a prominent college and a scholarship where it starts more. He joins the paper. He's a minority Puerto Rican man in a PWI. And they're around this time, there's starting to be, this is like 2013-ish, there's starting to be more and more talk about diversity and equity and inclusion. So that he starts that exaggerating more, because if he wrote a paper and he really just was more truthful about things, they would feel like it wasn't interesting enough. So it's kind of like that book, Erasure, that was written by Everett Purcell, that became the movie American Fiction, which was a great movie if anybody ever seen that. This book is similar to that book. But it's different too, because it's not really so much satire. He's talking about things that really happen. Once he gets out of college, he gets a job at this prominent newspaper. And this is in the wake of, this is 2016, 27, around that time, 2018, and you had 2020 Black Lives Matter. Everybody was interested in diversity and inclusion. All of these social media influencers were coming out, activists, and there was some faking going on. And that's part of what I wanted to bring out and to talk about, because it was a shame. On the one hand, it was a time that finally our voices were being taken seriously and given major platforms, but it didn't wasn't always authentic conversations we were able to have because it was like people had to capitulate to certain tropes in order to get an article out. So what happened was that when he got ready to write for the paper, he wanted he ended up writing about his best friend that was incarcerated, and he fudged some stuff, and then I won't tell what happens there. I think it's a great book to discuss in senior AP classes, college settings, but I also said podcast because something dawned on me recently. We know right now that everyone isn't going to college, and a lot of there's digital spaces that are bringing people together and younger people together, and podcasts. So even if you're not in a formal college setting, you can still read great books and have discussions that can help us sort through these things. And this is one that can do it. And you can even contact the author who would probably be interested in reading it with you. I came across this great interview on a site called Tell the Bees, and you can read the interview between the author and why he felt the need to write this book. But the article was called Victim of the Year. And I'm going to pull out a couple of quotes that was on the Telling the Bees site. Somewhere around 2014 and 2015, things started changing. In the media, hearing from diverse, marginalized voices became popular. Personal essays and hybrid stories that had a little reporting but were grounded in an author's identity went viral. Online, it felt like everyone was trying to figure out some way to distance themselves from whiteness or privilege by staking claims to identity markers they had loose or non-existent ties. Remember that woman, Rachel Zalazal, who was faking? Others took to virtue signaling in weird and cringy ways. I was happy at first in the media. At least we really did need to hear from more diverse voices. And it was great to see more opportunities to crack the upper echelons of the industry. But then celebrating identities morphed into this trench warfare where hierarchies of identities were erected, and all this infighting among people were used to just call themselves liberals took place. In the media, I noticed that although writers like myself were getting opportunities, most were tied to performing the same trick: keep writing about our identities, our trauma, our marginalization, and so forth. Anything outside those bounds was often rejected. So that's partly what is problematic, I think, sometimes about American culture. And I wanted to pose this question out there. I don't know if I have any people live listening now, but why is why is America so obsessed with victimization? And that's something that I'd love to hear you comment on, whether it's now or in the future. The other question that I have is, how does modern culture encourage marginalized people to capitalize on trauma? And something that I was thinking about, which leads to the reason why I was asking this is, I have children, they're adults now, but around those same years that the author's talking about, they would be involved in different upward mobility type of activities, well, whether it was like going to apply for colleges or participating in scholarship based pageants like my daughter did. And whenever there were these, like, say, if there was an essay prompt or there was some type of competition, it seemed like the people who had a trauma story were the ones that were picked. And I know that pain and, I don't want to ever dismiss that. So that's not what I'm saying. People, we all go through losses in life, some more than others. And some of them had some very harsh things that happened. But it just seemed like there was this environment where if you didn't come from that particular type of stereotype, um, your story wasn't worthy of being shared, or your life wasn't uncovered as much. And I was wondering if anyone else had anything to add to it, because I worry about that. I think that we're more than just our pain. Pain is part of life, and it's also not for other people to like just use for their entertainment value, get entertained by it, or even get educated by it and then move on. And I started to feel like that a lot of that was going on during the summer of 2020, when all of a sudden certain people was concerned with Black lives mattering, and they're like, I want to be educated, educate me, or tell me about all the, and it seemed like it was, they wanted to kind of rush the process along, when it's nothing to rush along. It's something that you have to, if it's something you're really interested in, you can seek it out yourself. You can talk to people, you can read and figure out the same way. Like, I remember being in a meeting, and one of my white women colleagues was talking about a brand new car she was getting ready to get. And then we were on a chat, and they were going on and on about this car, all the stats of it. And I said, the same way that they can dig and share about the stats of the car is the same way if you have a deep interest in learning about other people's cultures and um, joys and pains and highs and lows. You can dig that out too, especially with all the technology we have. So, that's what bothered me about how we create this environment that makes people feel like they have to exaggerate. Um, this is another question that I'd like to put out there, which is, what other writing prompts could be used on college essays, scholarship programs, and even reality shows? Because I know sometimes when people are applying to go on these reality shows, you need a background, and they want an interesting background. And when you go through hardship, yes, you do become stronger. You do learn lessons. I'm not dismissing that. I think there's other ways that we can um, help people figure out their stories without having them feel like they gotta stereotype themselves. That's what I'm saying. We do need to know about you going through stuff, but don't feel like you gotta fake the funk. I When I put this flyer on there, I thought about that song on Kendrick Lamar's album "Pimp a Butterfly." You ain't gotta lie, and that song came to my mind when I was thinking about this book. You don't have to lie. It's We have a collective struggle, and then if you look at our backgrounds and our intersections, there's hardship. There's hardship being a human being right now. Why do we have to exaggerate it? So, I don't want to belabor the point, but it's something that's very problematic. I have one more clip to show about the book that I think emphasizes some of these. Janelle on IG says, I'm late to your show. Sorry. Hey, Janelle. If the U.S. never makes amends for its past wrongdoings, they make victims of way too many that all want their hardship acknowledged, right? And that's kind of what's happening now, because now everyone feels like they're a victim, and then they want to also discount people's stories. And then now there's erasure, where there's a movement now by the current administration to wipe out books and museums and institutions that documented this, so that 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now, there's no record of groups that were wronged, robbed, lynched, whatever that's happened. But the way that we're discussing victimization, there's a lot of perversion and issues with it. And I think we need to have more sincere discussions about it. Thank you, Janelle. And I think, producer, you ready to play the clip?
We have a we have a comment coming in.
All right.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Give me 1 second.
All right, no problem. The whole college admissions process should be revamped ASAP because of that college cheating scandal years ago. Yeah, and that comment from Janelle on IG. Yes, and right. And I was just thinking when I was preparing this show, a story about this is a real thing that happened to my daughter in high school, where a classmate of hers told her that she was gonna fabricate a story to try to get in college. Um, and yeah, so this is happening. There's a lot of fabrication going on. And what I was also thinking about was why these colleges keep making that be the thing that they're using to open up the gates for kids coming in. Because I think their argument is they think that that's going to help them get higher caliber of students, but it's not really working that way. So they need to, like you said, revamp how they're assessing students, especially since a lot of the job market now, even for the most prominent colleges, kids are still coming out having trouble securing employment. So you're being real picky and you're using these superficial means to bring people in, and you're not really even giving them a ton of opportunity for them to improve their lives, which is slightly a different topic, but it's all related. Okay, we got the clip ready to go.
And I wonder if it's because the topic of the book, it's something that's not been discussed so much, like leveraging the intersections that we carry.
Yeah, I think. Well, I landed on that like part of the book around that time. I think I had inklings of it before, but I think part of, along with the idea of chasing this expectations, I had this idea of who was going to read it or who was supposed to like the book, and how I didn't want to offend them. I didn't want to like ruffle any feathers. And so these issues, the idea of leveraging your trauma, for example, for social media praise, or for opportunities, or the idea of these publications, sort of only
looking for writers of color to do these types of stories.
Yes.
I had experienced it, and I was thinking about the stuff, and I was talking about it with friends and other writers, but didn't feel like I felt like if I wrote about it, it would be too, controversial, or it would be too, those people who I was trying to win.
It's real. It becomes a thing. If you write about it, then it's like, okay, it exists.
Yeah, and because I hadn't seen it out there, it was like, if you don't talk about it, like if someone hasn't talked about it yet, then you can't say anything yet.
Right.
Talked about, you know what I mean? So there was, and again, I'm trying to make sure that it's this type of book that I have in my mind, and these type of people are going to like it. So I'm not going to do anything that's going to ruffle their feathers. And so I think when I finally let all that go, and I was just like, I'm interested in this stuff. I want to write an interesting story around it with this character who's like leaning into it, and just go with it. Everything clicked into place.
Yeah. So, and he's talking about what I just described, the inauthenticity that was starting to happen around that time, and how even people that were impacted, the black and brown writers, people in the colleges, people in the workplaces, people on the DEI scene were participating in this because it was like they were trying to maximize the moment. And I know that was happening because I didn't work in DEI ever, but I did DEI adjacent work. And I remember being a part of it for years before it became hot. And then all of a sudden, when it became hot, it was just kind of a different type of scene that I really actually started moving away from, because something about it didn't feel real. And now we're in that post world. Here's another question though, because there is exaggeration and faking and inauthenticity in artistry. So I was thinking about the hip hop world, rapping, and how I wanted to see what you all thought about this. When we go to a movie, we know that they're acting. We read a book, if it's fiction, we know that those are characters. And we accept that. Why is it that, let's say, if there's a rapper who is rapping about a character, but it's not their lives, we tend to like clown them more, or we feel like they're fake? Do we think that that's the same? Do you think that it's different? Also, actors who can play a role, social media influencers are the new. They're another one where I sometimes see people posting stuff and it's just fake. And I know it may not be people that I'm like on the phone with every day, because I don't want to insinuate that I'm around a bunch of fakers, but like people that I have come across in my life that I may be connected to on social media. And they are portraying things. I'm not talking about your highlight reel, which is we post the better pictures of ourselves. I'm talking about flat out portraying things that are not real. Do we say that they're just acting? I mean, is it the same? Because we will watch a movie and know that the character is acting. So we're okay with that. Should that be the way we look at this? Because we know that this is faking. We know that there's people who rap about, sing about, and post about things that are not their particular realities. So what do you guys think about that? That was part of why I liked this book, because it had my mind thinking about that type of thing, like authenticity in artistry, in life. Because what happened with this character, Javier, was that some of the stuff he was writing was correct, was true. But he would sandwich in unreal stuff in it in order to get it more likes and get it published, which got him a better job and allowed him to have money. He also developed an addiction because once he got online and his online presence started building up, he would get like a rush every time he got a retweet or a like or share. And that's something else I heard the author say on one of these podcasts. It's like you get that dopamine addiction. So if you are, you got 5,000, 10,000, or a million followers, and you've got all these people who are sharing and building you up, it does get addicting. And you're getting it through a little bit of a falsehood. Should we treat those people like they're just acting and it's okay? I mean, there are singers who sing the songs they write, and there's singers who interpret songs brilliantly. I covered Whitney Houston on one of my shows and her biography, and that was a really good point brought up. Was she was brilliant at interpretation. She wasn't a songwriter, but she interpreted the songs that other people were writing. So is that something that we should think about? Or do you think that rap and poetry and hip hop is a different category? I'm kind of like, I grew up in an era as a writer and a rapper that you write your rhymes and they should be authentic to you. Or if you are going to write it in the third person, kind of acknowledge that. But don't make it like you're the person if you're not, because then that it's like you're faking it. But I know that people get called out. I don't want to start naming names for portraying being hardcore when maybe that wasn't their lifestyle. And it's okay because we have a spectrum of how we live. And we need to hear the different spectrums. So if we have young Black men who grew up in suburban areas, rural areas, they weren't all in the city and the projects, and they weren't all into that trap life. So the F what? Let's hear about your voices too. But we get so tied into these real narrow tropes. We have the girls, and they're not all, in a certain lifestyle themselves, and they have different interests. Let's hear those. Let's hear about it. But it's also the environment. The environment shapes us and flattens us into about three or four tropes, and then it gets boring. So, what do you all think about that? Do you think that we should treat it all as characters? Janelle on IG, when rappers do the most trying to portray a lifestyle, I just sit back and laugh. Even white rappers pretend to be Black culture to be accepted. It's wow. Yeah. So we're realizing that there's a lot of faking going on. But I do get worried because it's just continuing, and now it's gotten really big because there are people who don't know that it's fake. They think it's real. And then it's being used and weaponized against us. Let's see. So yeah, so that was that. So I would say that that's 4-star book. Very good. Kind of a short read too. It's not too long. And congrats to him, and share that and maybe, read it if you are interested. Okay, so now I'm gonna move on to the next book. This book was excellent too. It's called My Name is Iris by Brando Skyhorse. Brando Skyhorse is an American author. He was born and raised in Echo Park, California. He has his MFA from Stanford and University of California, and he's of Mexican descent. And this book, wow, yeah. This book gets into, it's super relevant too, because it gets into the lives of the undocumented. So first off, did you know that there are about 13, it's estimated between 11 million and 13 million undocumented people in the United States? And the states that have the most undocumented are California, Texas, Florida, New York, and Illinois. Let me get into the plot of this. So it's a novel, it's a fiction story. It has a dystopian tone to it. It's about this woman named Iris Prince. Iris Prince is starting over after years of drifting apart. She and her husband are going through a surprisingly drama free divorce. She moves to a new house in a new neighborhood and has plans for gardening, coffee clubs, and spending time with her 9-year-old daughter, Melanie. It feels like her life is finally exactly what she wants it to be. One morning, she looks outside her kitchen window and sees that a wall has appeared in her front yard. Where did it come from? What does it mean? And why does it seem to keep growing? Meanwhile, a Silicon Valley startup has launched a high tech wrist wearable called the Band, and it's pitched as a convenient, eco friendly tool to help track local utilities, replace driver's licenses and IDs. The ban is available only to those who can prove parental citizenship. Suddenly, Iris, a proud second generation Mexican American, is now of unverifiable origin, unable to prove who she is or where she is, and her undocumented loved ones belong. Amid a climate of fear and hate fueled violence, Iris must confront how far she'll go to protect what matters most to her. So there's some magical realism in this book. It was very heartfelt, hearing about her story. She grew up, her parents, they came into the country, and it was like her and her little sister, they, they worked hard to raise them, but they had to stay low key because they were undocumented. And her mother used to always say to her, "You were born here. Nobody can take that from you. You were born here. Just remember that." Her mother also used to say a lot to her about how to conduct herself, and compliance was a big part of her childhood upbringing. Make sure you follow the rules, make sure you stay quiet. And I'm bringing that up for a reason. So as she gets older, she gets through school. She has a traumatic experience with a friend who I won't say what that is because it's a little bit of a spoiler. But she ends up becoming kind of like middle class, and that's when she decide, her and her husband are separated. She's living in another house that she just bought, and the state of California launches this program called the Ban, and they make it sound like it's about environmental improvement, but the band is a wristband that they want all the citizens in the well, all, not everybody, to um wear for everything they do. If you get stopped by the police, the band is used to verify your driver's license. You go into the grocery store to buy groceries, you use your band. So you get the point. Also, if you go to the doctor's offices, the band can make sure that your medical data, the doctor has access to whatever your medical data is. And they're like, there's this movement to get everybody with the band. And it reminds me of like the way the vaccine was, because half the population are for it, and then there's people that are against it. So there's that going on in the book. Her daughter is like coming home from school and is like, "Mommy, did you get your band yet? The school said that they're gonna throw us a party if everybody gets the band because it's saving the earth." But what happens is that Iris can't get a band because her parents were not, were undocumented. So it gets a little complicated. Iris was always raised to follow the rules. And up until then, she was a strong rule follower. She would even get into debates with her sister, who was a little more kind of like socially conscious and more against white culture and embracing it like that. Um, Iris wanted to be successful. She wanted to live in a great neighborhood, quote unquote. And so she starts to have these experiences when she's unable to get this band. She has a run in with the police that scares her. She gets discriminated against. She's not able to get, one day she goes to a restaurant with her sister and her mother, and they refuse to serve her. It's a lot of things that happens because she doesn't have this band. And so it gets you to thinking about these initiatives that are couched in sustainability. We know we need to improve the planet, but then something that is supposed to be considered a good thing, there's ramifications. So there's strong themes in it: the hidden lives of the undocumented, Mexican American culture, survival remorse, family, friendship, sibling relationships, marriage. Her and her husband are going through a marital crisis and they're on the verge of divorce. And then I also said the model minority. Now, I know that the model minority, that term, is associated with Asian people. So I'm using it in the wrong way, but that model minority sprinkles itself in other minority groups. It's not just Asians that embrace um, being perfect, or and a lot of times when it comes to Black and brown cultures, the term is usually respectability politics, where you feel like if I'm just perfect, if I just do everything right, according to white standards, I won't be um, treated poorly. I'll be able to live a great life. I'll be able to have the American dream. And we have seen that that's not true. So this is a huge part of what happens to Iris in the book, because she tried to do everything and be that well-behaved person. And I think the author was purposely showing how being overly compliant can hurt us. It was a lot about like rules and the way Iris would justify, well, rules are good. They give us order, they give us predictability, they can keep us safe. But they started changing these rules, like the ban was supposed to be an option. And then all of a sudden, it was required. Even when with her job, she reported to work one day and they said, you people have 30 days to get the ban, or else you will be docked your pay and you will lose your job. So something that was supposed to be an option, that that people were doing as an eco initiative, now you're forcing people. And we have a lot of like tech products that are out there. I work in health tech, and I know that there's a ton of products, there's wearables, there's different health exchanges, and those things can be helpful. Like there are things called Lifeline, where people have elderly parents, or even if they're not elderly, and say they have some type of chronic condition, or they are dealing with mobility issues, and their loved ones live in another place, and they can see if they're being safe, or if something happens, it can alert to um, EMS, or alert to a family member that can help them. So you can see how tech and these innovations can be beneficial. When you start forcing things and making it so that it has to be, it's a a necessary thing, that, and then you tie it to employment, or you tie it to a person feeling like they're left out, I think that's where things get problematic. And we've seen that happen with, other initiatives. I'm just pausing to see if there's any comments out there about anything I've talked about. I do have a video to show. Pamela on X says, that sounds like this real digital ID Trumps wants people to get. Yeah. Yep. And this book, the author was saying that it was supposed to be dystopian, which dystopian is usually somewhat of an exaggeration. And then there were things that were happening as he was writing the book. He's like, dag, the stuff that I'm drumming up as a possibility is actually happening quicker than my fiction mind, can say, which is scary. Is the video going to be shown, producer, or?
Yeah, I thought you were still waiting because we had a comment coming in.
No, I don't. Yeah. I can address the comment after the video. I just didn't to be too much. It was, I don't want to too much.
I'll put it on right now.
Okay, thank you. I can't hear it. Let me see. Is there something going on with the sound?
I'm just trying to cue it.
Okay.
So much of Iris's drive is stemming from her wanting to give her 9-year-old daughter a solid place in the world, a place that maybe Iris felt that she didn't have. There's a scene in the book where we learn that Iris's original name was Inez. And the reason it got changed is that when she went to elementary school, all the teachers could not pronounce Inez. They would always butcher it or change it. And so finally one teacher says, "Do you mind if I call you Iris? Is that okay?" And because Iris doesn't really want to make waves, and she's, in 7th grade and doesn't really know how to respond to this, it's like, well, okay, fine, great. And then all of a sudden she becomes Iris. And that's basically, it's just one more step in sort of her evolution of herself as a character, which is, don't make waves, follow the rules, and you get to have your happy life in America. And what we realize with the coming of the wall and other things that go on in the book is that there is no place for her to have a happy life. Wherever it is that she is, this sort of like thing that's out there, I guess, in the world. It's coming for her, whether she likes it or not.
And so the wall
Yeah.
continues to grow
So,
in her yard. But
so
not
that
everyone can
is,
see that wall. And not every,
yeah. So,
Brando, Skyhorse, and
here we go. I think there was that was a great point. There was another video I think that we have too, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the wall, the magical realism that's going on. The second big plot of the book is the wall. The wall, the only people that could see the wall is her and her daughter. So the brand new house that she buys, and she's so excited about it. It's beautiful and it's in a great area where her kid can go to an excellent school. And it's a HOA organization that is a HOA community. But she is the only person that sees this huge wall that's growing. So it's a metaphor for like the exclusivity and the harshness that that people and undocumented people go through, that we're just walking around maybe as citizens blind to. And it changed me, because I just started thinking about like how I don't that it's like a life living in the United States as a citizen, and then imagine having kids and you go out to work, and every day when you come home, you don't know, you could get snatched up while you're at your job and then be separated from your family forever. Or maybe you're driving and you get stopped, and that could be it, because of your driver's license is showing that you're not a citizen. It just had me really thinking on a deeper level what they're going through. And even now with ICE out there, and what undocumented lives are like. And it's millions of them. And there's so many opinions I understand about people's coming into the country, migrating. Do they have a right? Do they not? But when you read books like this, your empathy changes, because you're like, wow, there's things that happen to that family that I don't want to get into because they're spoilers, but it made me really think about what's happening now. I even started wondering, Lunel, this comedian that I really like, she lives in between LA and Vegas. And she did one of her lives about maybe 2 months ago. And she was showing parts of LA that used to have a lot of migrant workers and how they're like gone. Not that they've all been captured, but they're somewhere. And it's like, what is that like to have to live and try to make yourself invisible? So I've been reading a lot of books on migration across various cultures all year. And so it's and usually I've come to a revelation that, many times people don't want to leave their countries and come to places that are foreign just to be able to survive and live. And then some are doing it and they're not getting what they think they're going to get. Here's another video of him reading some of the author reading some of the book, Brandon Scott.
Solid guy, which he repeated with pride. We do not say retired in our house. Trabajadores never retire. Watching endless TV football matches, Gonzalo's body molded into his recliner and never left. My father's confident masculine hands disfigured into catatonic pincers for his remote controls. Dolores and Gonzalo were born in Mexico. They didn't share or explain what life there was like for them. When I asked, they said, everything is here. Who cares what came before? Did you forget already that you were born here? Act it. Growing up, Dolores asked me over and over, what are the rules to live in America? I didn't understand why, but I knew the answers well. Speak English in front of strangers. No Spanish anywhere outside the house. Walk far, but not too far, from gringos on a sidewalk until they have acknowledged you. Call any gringo you meet sir, even if they are young. Call any gringo you meet ma'am, especially if they are. And never, ever cry in front of anyone, even if you think they are your friend. Do that, my mama said, and they'll let you become anything you want here.
Yeah.
Clap
And
if you want.
yeah,
Thank you.
I wanted to show that clip is because, as I was saying, a huge theme of this book was play the game, play the rules, follow the rules, and you'll prosper. And there were populations and continue to be populations of people from uh, Hispanic communities, Caribbean communities, Black communities, Asian communities that take that route. And some of them get some, get success, but many find out that um, they that isn't going to protect you from the monster of you know um, whatever is going on in society. You can't just respect your way into success or safety. There are real fights that have happened and are continuing to happen, and we all have to be aware of our civil rights and the violations. And then some of the minority groups that have been here for years that championed and were fighting for those things, that's why they were fighting for them. And when you come here, I invite people to learn about that so that you have a better understanding and you're not buying into stereotypes of Black groups or minority groups that you're not aware of, because then that breeds more ignorance and bigotry. When we're all vulnerable to that, and that's why we really need to educate ourselves to what's happening. uh, so yeah, so I really appreciated this book, especially during this time. I've been thinking about how I want to be an ally during this time for the undocumented. I went back and forth about that because I know that as a Black woman and during this time, there's also feelings of certain populations within Hispanic cultures distancing themselves from the Black liberation movements. And I've seen that, but there are some who have been our allies too, even going back since the 70s. And so there is both happening, but I'm not going to be ignorant and align myself to um, movements now that I don't think are healthy for our society, like a homogenous society, or a society where people can't migrate for a better life, because a lot of the people who are promoting that migrated here themselves or were brought here or brought loved ones here. And I mean, they even talked about, even in the book, unfortunately, the author was saying how even some of their own people in their Mexican communities and some of the communities who have been here several generations was starting to turn on the ones that just got here and didn't have a band. And I'm like, you see how quick it is to switch teams? and you get success, and then you start turning your nose up on somebody else when that was your uh, journey or your parents' journey 2 or 3 generations ahead. It's not right. So on I have a slide here about I came across this page, ACLU of Wyoming, 7 ways to be an ally to immigrants, and I wanted to share that, have conversations, be inclusive, support organizations that help immigrants. I want to get more information about that and make sure that I'm supporting organizations that align with how I feel. Use your privilege to speak up. So in our case, our privilege is citizenship, and our intelligence, maybe money. Um, if you have law degrees, offer direct support to immigrants in your community, recognize overlapping discrimination, and stay engaged and keep learning. Yeah, the story really touched me, to say the least, and I just encourage us to, keep thinking about this. I don't like how things are happening now with all these communities and the way that we're becoming a very policed, militarized nation. And a lot of that was put forth in this book. Has anyone out there willing to share their thoughts on this topic? Yeah, there's a comment. Yeah. Yeah. So now it went from the poor and the huddle to run it down, so people can purchase citizenship as if it's been a commodity like everything else. And there's journeys that people make, and the journeys that some of the migrants make, the is wow, those physical journeys that they go through, some of them, just to get here in and of itself is a story. And a lot of, there's books about that too. um so to for somebody to be able to just buy it, you wonder if they appreciate the opportunity that coming here affords them, if they can just purchase it. So what kind of caliber of people are we going to have now? Because if you had people that were like swimming and walking and risking their lives on boats and jungles and coming through starving and going through a lot of human trafficking, um, obstacles, and then they get here and they're kind of like just trying to work and survive. I know there's criminality and everything in every population, um, but I'm just speaking about in general. You're going through all of that, and what kind of caliber? Usually, it takes some human strength to do that. So when you get to where you go to, you don't really want a lot of ruckus because you just went through a lot to try to get here. You don't want to get deported. Versus if you're able to just charge it. Do you appreciate it? Do you appreciate the people that are the citizens? I don't know. I don't want to stereotype. Um, yeah, Pamela on X. I feel that too. I agree. The Biden administration and Trump administration made the migrant issue so messy. It's hard to get a true perspective on everything. That's how I've been feeling too. And I think that's why I'm trying to like read more and figure out if I can get not just the sound bites, the stuff that everybody's saying, but go a level deeper. Because I'm trying to wrap my mind around it too. Because I mean, I know there's different stories that we're getting about this. So I think we got to keep digging and learning about this and then how it connects to us. Yeah. But we are impacted by it because it's all one, it's just, we're living in the country. So we can't totally say, well, it's not really my issue. The policing and the militarizing makes it our issue because we're in these same communities and we want to be safe. Secondly, we don't want the slippery slope of violation of rights to slip into our lives, like the quote, injustice somewhere, injustice everywhere. So just us learning about it and talking about it more and being involved in it is important. Thank you, Pamela. Any other comments before we wrap?
Yeah, I think I have one more coming in
Okay.
from Twitter. Um, it's I'm getting those dots like they keep writing, so just give me a second for that
Oh,
first. I
we'll
gotta
give you
bring it in.
give you a
Yeah,
minute.
I gotta bring it in. Oh, okay, got it.
Groups and Pamela in New York City used to cooperate decades ago. Now they're just polarized, keeping to themselves. And yeah, that's happening quite a bit. We're very isolated and tribalized and polarized. And that will help certain um, movements because if something like a band or some kind of program comes through and we're not coming together to push up against it, it's easier for those policies more and more to end up chipping away at our freedom if we're so separated. So yeah. So I think we should continue to find ways to build community within our own and then with outside to so that we're not overcome by these new world orders. Has anyone done any of the practices that I listed to be an ally to the undocumented? If you feel that that's something appropriate to do. All right. I just wanted to make sure I gave that enough time. So that wraps today's episode. Um, I thank these two authors for giving, giving the world two good books with some very powerful issues that they wrapped together in stories that were just really entertaining. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Saturday and next week, and I'll see you back next week with some more good reads.